Yes, hello and welcome to the Kayo Sports NRL podcast. Lara Pitt here alongside a couple of legends to talk all things rugby league. Cooper, Cronk and Paul Crawley. Great to see you. I'm so looking forward to this chat for many reasons, but I'm just so happy the footy is back. This weekend is going to be enormous across the weekend of 10 games total. And I loved seeing you, Cooper, back at the footy on Saturday.
You're about the only person that enjoyed that, Lars. Everyone else.
Cooper at Cogra, how good?
I was sitting out the back telling him it was good too.
I would say this. I think the Bulldogs have a depth of talent that they're going to be a very strong team for a long period of time, because some of those kids in the second half were tremendous. Sanders, Smith and Reid went at it in the Dragons game. But then obviously Clifford delivered for the Cowboys too. So he might be the guy that partners with Tom Dearden for the Cowboys for the year ahead.
And this weekend, Paul, so many big guns on the team list, which is exciting.
Big guns, but you know, I love that too. I love the fact that you can look forward to watching Lachlan Galvin at 7 this week and Burton at 6. You can see Jonah Glover playing for the Rabbitohs when he didn't get a go. But I also like looking forward to the kids that are emerging. Yeah. You know, names that we haven't really seen play, like Bassingthwaite at the Roosters and Toby Rodwell on Tony Large. Is it on a Tony Large at Manly? You know, all these sort of names, and there's just been such hype about these kids, and they get a chance to step out on the big stage. It's not NRL debut, but you get to see what they're made of.
Yeah, we'll be in Newcastle for a doubleheader on Saturday. On Fox League, but we're going to talk more about the trials coming up this weekend and the All-Stars games a little later in the podcast. But we have to get stuck into the news that blew everyone away 4 or 5 days ago now, and it is still dominating the headlines. I have to start with you on this, Crawls, because as a veteran journalist, it really took everybody by surprise, and that does not happen in rugby league.
When you think about it, you come to the biggest player swap stories in the last 50 years, and it ranks up with the biggest. Like Bobby Fulton leaving Manly and going to East in the 1970s, Ron Coote to East, Cooper Cronk to East, Sonnyville Williams to East, Brad Fittler. Seriously, like they're the biggest stories that I can remember. And Payne Haas was as big as any of them, if not bigger, because no one expected Payne Haas to leave the Broncos, even as late as 3 days before this deal, was announced. Michael Maguire was saying they think he's going to stay and everything's tracking towards that. And then out of nowhere, I don't know one person in the game who knew this was happening, which in itself is a masterstroke by Souths, how they were able to keep this under wraps and have no talk, and almost leaving the Broncos feel comfortable about the fact that Haas was going to stay. And meanwhile, for some period of time, behind the scenes, Wayne and Souths had been working on getting the most formidable forward in the game to their club next year, leaving the premiers. Yeah, it's just astonishing.
That's the part of the story that I love. Like, I love
you
that
love this story.
Because
you love it.
Right?
You love that he got away with it without any of us knowing.
I do. And there's a part to it too, because I remember reading some quotes from Wayne about Keon leaving, and geez, Wayne's speaking pleasantly about Keon. And then I'm thinking...
So now you think he knew back then?
Well, no, I don't. But then I thought, well, if Keon leaves South's pack, he's their most athletic forward, the guy that can break a line, create momentum, and Latrell's going to need some of that. And then a couple of days later, the most athletic, gifted, line-breaking front rower in the game moves over to South. So, look, Paul will know fact and fiction from this story. There's so many different parts to it. But I could just imagine Wayne making a couple of phone calls in around the stealth mission, meeting in places that no one could see or whatever, and the fact that they could clean move across, a huge talking point. And it actually puts Wayne's stand in the game back on an even bigger stage, because he just got the best front rower in the world to come across to his football club.
Yeah.
I think the part to it that, it feels somewhat, because it happens so quickly. I mean, you're talking about Wayne maybe thinking about it at the Keon stage, maybe knowing that was an option. But by all reports, this literally unfolded from a Friday to a Sunday. Is that how you?
Well,
is that
that's one version of the story. Yeah. My understanding is that these deals don't get done in 2 days, and this had been moving along behind the scenes with no one knowing about it for some time. Now, they may have started with Latrell and David Fifita, putting out reaching out to Payne and saying, mate, if you want to consider coming down here, you'd love the joint. Wayne's a great coach. And Payne also knew, because he's had a relationship with Wayne going back to 2018 when he debuted under him at the Broncos. And throughout that to now, and all the challenging periods Payne's gone through with his life, Wayne stayed in contact with him. And so then you got to the stage where Keon had gone to Wayne on Christmas Eve, I think it was, and told him that he was taking up the offer at the Dragons, and Wayne was, he was serious about the fact that he was happy for Keon because he's doing what's best for his life. The Rabbitohs couldn't match the offer, the 5-year offer that was on the table. But then when you look through all the front rowers, the elite 10 front rowers in the game, and look at who was available for that 2027 season, there was one bloke, and it was Payne Haas. And how the Rabbitohs orchestrated this and got under Brisbane's guard is just magnificent.
Yeah, I don't think it happened in 2 days. I think there's a bit more to it than that. And the phone calls and the relationship. Again, like Wayne is obviously a father figure to a lot of the players that come through under his leadership, right? And Payne Haas has had some challenges in his personal life that not too many other people have had to face up. And I truly believe, like, again, I'm not part of the conversation and ringing around and finding out, but Payne, to me, has this relationship with Wayne that he can rely on him, trust him, with some deep conversations. And maybe that is the honest part of this whole thing. Maybe with Payne being, the grand figure of his family, that he wanted to feel comfortable with another person in his life that could say, hey, don't do this. Hey, do this. Try and be this type of man for your kids and your brothers and sisters and things like that. So I like to feel that the nice part of this story is the reality of it. But the football part of it, geez, he's a hell of a player. And it puts South back in the premiership window. And thinking about it, it probably puts more pressure on Latrell Mitchell to be the main man. Because Wayne has got the ability to win grand finals. Payne has the ability to get a team on the front foot. Now, Souths are going to have some gun player like a Reece Walsh to come up with the plays. Latrell is one of the biggest moment players in our game.
But he'd be absolutely loving that.
So I think it's a great move from Wayne, and I love the story.
Of course. And before we get on to what it means for South, let's just talk about the fallout for Brisbane, because that's a huge story in itself. They're the premiers. You've gone down the wholesome line that he's moving to South for the coach, for Wayne Bennett, for that father figure.
Am I wrong?
Obviously in rugby league we're all sus, right? Paul, we're sus on why he's leaving.
I don't swallow it that simply as,
There must be more to this, right? Because why would you leave the premiers?
I'll say it this way. I'm not saying that Payne has particularly fallen out with Michael Maguire, right? And it's his coaching techniques, his hard-ass coaching techniques that drove him away from the club. But there's no question in the world it's Bennett's ability to bring those players in and cuddle them and give them advice and be that father figure that has attracted him. So Payne obviously felt he wasn't getting that at the Broncos, or he needed a change. He had been there for 10 years, but they just won a premiership. He was getting the same amount of money. His life's up there. Even his manager came out and said Brisbane is his town, the Broncos are his club, and that's his life, yet he's chosen to move away from that. There was talk last year during the season when Payne was playing injured at one point that he needed a break, and there's no question in the world that the rugby league rumour mill was in overdrive, that Payne wasn't particularly happy with how some things were being managed at the time. That's as true as we come. That was being spoken about at every level. Okay, so it was coming out of the Broncos club. Doesn't always necessarily mean that it's right, but it was definitely a conversation. And I think when Payne would look back at what he's achieved so far and in the 10 years and the way he's driven his body, he would also have to think, how can I get the most out of my future? And I do think that there is a stark contrast between Wayne's coaching and Madge's coaching that would have been an attraction to Payne to try and get the most out of his body for as long as he can, for his family as well.
And there was a comment from his manager saying that he wants to grow. He wants to, he's at the peak of his powers. He is the best in that position, but he wants to grow. So whether he feels like the way that Madge does things, like you say, is not going to get that for him, and maybe the way Bennett does things is a better approach for him.
To win a grand final, a lot of things have to go well.
Yeah.
And you cannot, cover up cracks in a team, whether it's a coach, whether it's playing standards, whether it's fitness, whether it's lacking skill. Premiership winning teams don't cover up all those cracks and get lucky. Craig Bellamy tipped me over the red line of, basically every second week for 14 years in terms of training standards, right? So every premiership winning team trains hard. And I feel like, again, I'm not at the coalface of things, but I tend to believe that you can still respect, adore, the Brisbane Broncos and what they've done for you, but you can still respect and adore Wayne Bennett and make a decision purely based on that as opposed to something else. But again, maybe it's a little bit of everything that's coming together, but I like to feel that Payne Haas is a very good man for his family, and he's probably done this for the right reasons.
I think what you say there, Cooper, is another chapter to the story too, because I truly do think that Payne has won the competition up there, and he's won 6 Paul Morgan medals, and he's established himself as the game's best front rower. But there would also be a challenge, like you did late in your career, where he'd want to go on another journey and see if he can do it at multiple clubs. And I think that would have been a driving factor as well, because I know the first time that I spoke about this after the story had broken, that Michael Carianis had broke it on the Telegraph, and I spoke to Bennett about it, and one of the first things he mentioned was Glenn Lazarus. Now, that goes back to 1992, when Lazo was already a champion prop who had won premierships at the Raiders, and he made that big, bold decision to go up to the Broncos. And up until then, the Broncos hadn't won anything, and Lazarus was the guy that Bennett really credits for turning that team around and turning them to, teaching them basically from being a great team to how to win. And that's what, that's one of the first things that's come out of his mind. So, that's another part of the story. But yeah, there's a lot of different angles to this story. I think would have led Payne to make the decision that he did.
Just going back and I guess putting a line under this whole Madge conspiracy, that perhaps that he was training him too hard or he wasn't listening to him when it came to injuries last year. You said Craig Bellamy pushed you across the line plenty of times in training. Did he ever ask you or push you to play through injury? Were there moments like that?
Not like literally you must do it, but there was conversations at different stages. And the one thing that isn't spoken about in terms of the training intensity of a Craig Bellamy or a Wayne Bennett or a Michael Maguire, I'm pretty certain that those coaches are flexible and agile enough that if they're seeing their players teetering on the red line, lacking energy, they change and adapt for something else, right? But you can't drop your training standards, otherwise in the 78th minute of a grand final, you're not going to come up with a play. So the Wayne Bennett's, the Craig Bellamy's, and obviously Michael Maguire, this is me just having played under Craig, you go to the coach saying, listen, our playing group is a bit tired at the moment, we're lacking energy. We don't want to drop our training standards. Let's move a couple of other pieces around, i.e., have another half day off training or whatever it is. There's multiple ways to adapt and change, and I'm pretty certain when the Broncos went through a flat spot halfway through last year, they might not have dropped their training standards, but I'm pretty certain they would have changed something else around to get the players back up and going.
Unfortunately, though, that's a scar that Michael Maguire's reputation does carry, Coop, because there is no doubt in the world that when he was at South, and I know that's a decade ago, but when he was at South, he did
push the players,
the players beyond their limits, and that led to a split in that camp on the back of his fallout with Sam Burgess that was the beginning of the end for Madge. There's no question. So he may well have learned a lot of lessons since then, but that's where this story always goes back to, because at this stage, Michael Maguire has now won 2 NRL premierships, which is amazing in itself, and a Super League title. But what he hasn't been able to achieve to this point is proving that he can not only take a team to the championship, but he can make that into,
hard to argue with
a period.
Yeah. So moving on to what will unfold for the Broncos now this season. We know that Payne is there for the 2026, but will this impact how they play, what happens, and it's it's motivating, it's not going to change their star power, all of those things, but does just the storyline have an impact itself?
Yeah, I think that comes back to the culture piece, right? Like how united is a team. Look, every story is different. Look, I left Melbourne Storm. We managed to go on and still win 2017. Daly left Manly. They were at top of the ladder at some stage, fell away after that. So it depends on the culture and how selfless Payne, the team and everything else is about going back-to-back in 2026.
But the fact that he'd put this to bed now probably is a positive for the club, whereas, players that can let it go on through the whole year.
You can mount a case for both.
Yeah.
Right? But I think the key part to whether Broncos can go again or not is the senior leaders. I'm talking Payne, Patrick Carrigan, Ben Hunt, Adam Reynolds, Walsh, Ezra Mam. If they are genuinely united and want to do something again, they can do it. They're a scary football team when they put it together. So I would be putting a lot of responsibility on those guys to galvanise the group. No matter what we say about the Brisbane Broncos, it's up to those guys to lead the team every week at training.
It frees up a huge amount of salary cap space for beyond this season. How will it impact their roster for 27 and beyond?
Like Payne Haas's don't grow on trees, right? And like
Reynolds too.
And Reynolds has made the decision to leave, which I want to ask you about in minute too. But see, so if you're trying to replace a like for like with Payne Haas, well, every other, I went through the list recently, and all the guys you'd probably put in the top 10, 15 props in the game, none are coming off contract until the end of 2027 at the very earliest. So for the Broncos, it does leave them in a bit of a jam because you just can't replace that bloke and even get anyone close to him at the moment. They'll be relying probably from guys from within, the Xavier Willisons of the world and the younger players that they have coming through. But you tell me, Coop, can you? Because all the dominant teams in recent times, every single title contender of recent times has had that dominant front rower.
It's hard to find a like-for-like replacement at different stages, but I will say this. I think Patrick Carrigan is one of the best middle forwards in the game. I think it's a chance for him to elevate himself as the dominant alpha at the Brisbane Broncos. Willison is good. So there's opportunity for others to step up. But it's also up to the Broncos' pathway and recruitment system to find that next jewel in the crown, right? They've got talent galore up there. I think they'll be okay. But I think it's more about not what the Brisbane Broncos do without Payne. It's more what South Sydney can do with Payne. Because it all of a sudden flicks them up a couple of notches up the ladder, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Well, I actually think that it will add a spring to their step right now. Like as soon as that was announced on Monday or Sunday, and then the players turned up on Monday, there was said to be a genuine feeling of excitement in the camp, And so you've got guys like Latrell, and you've got guys like David Fafita and Brandon Smith, and blokes that you would look at, and for all they've achieved so far in the game, I don't think they've achieved what they're capable of. And so, does Payne coming there, put the wind up them and motivate them to get the best out of themselves? Because there's no doubt when you look at the squad that they've even got right now, that back line is red hot. They've got enough depth in the forwards to be a contender this year, so they've got to do it this year, and then Payne adds to it next year.
Yeah. So you've already declared it, though, that you think that this puts Souths, his signing makes them a premiership threat from 27.
Oh, not a premiership threat. I think there's a couple of other pieces of the jigsaw puzzle that need to fit in, but look, I'll put it this way. I would see that Souths are one of those teams that are going to fight for the bottom part of the 8 this year. But next year, they should definitely think that they have a chance of playing in the 8. You could make your career as a halfback off the back of Payne Haas. Like, I would just sit back and wait for Payne to run and then jump and take the next carry after that, do some ball playing. So I think it means that Latrell Mitchell, or unless they go to market and find someone else to help Latrell out, because I don't think Cody is going to be around next year.
This is meant to be his last
season. He's going to struggle to get more than 20 games this year. Humphreys is there, Sullivan's there. I love what Jai Gray is and what he stands for, but Latrell is the key part.
But would you consider Latrell as a 5'8", or a fullback or a centre? Do you think that's still his best spot?
If Latrell plays in the centres, he's going to touch the ball 10 times a game. 6 of them are going to be carrying it from his own yardage line. That means he's going to touch the ball 4 times. He could score a try and set up 2 with those 4 touches. But if you play him close to the ball and he has 20 touches, 30 touches, all of a sudden that ratio goes up. I think he would struggle defensively at 5'8", the movement and things like that. I could see a world where he defends at centre and plays at 5'8", but then he's going to need a genuine halfback to take all that game management, decision-making control to unlock him a little bit too. But I think Wayne has proven that in his coaching career, he's able to make those moves. Darren Lockyer to 5'8". I don't think if Souths win the premiership under Wayne Bennett, I don't think Latrell Mitchell is the centre.
Yeah.
He might defend there, but I think he's either fullback or 5'8".
Because when you look through their current roster, they don't seem to have that genuine, experienced, top-shelf 7 like Humphries is there and Sullivan's there, and they've brought Jonah Glover and they've got some young guys coming through that show, a lot of promise.
But Jai Gray has shown enough, like Tallis Duncan. Those guys did a great job at the back end of last year.
They have to be considering themselves as premiership threats in 27. When you look at their team and adding Payne Haas, yes, they're short a half, but, I mean, you've Payne Haas, David Fafita, Jack White and Brandon Smith, Latrell Mitchell.
That's why the pressure's on Latrell. If Latrell is not a 20-game player and playing 7.5 out of 10 most weeks, he will complement Payne Haas and Payne Haas will complement him. Yeah. But he's the key to the puzzle there.
Yeah. So halves going forward will be the big thing for Wayne to look at this season and next.
You look at the situation that South signed Payne under too, was the fact that they had so many players coming off contract in 2028, which freed up, and on the back of Keon's decision to go to the Dragons, that freed up so much space. And I had a list here where literally there is 4 of the top squad at Souths who are contracted beyond 2027. So into 2028, it's Jai Gray, Lachlan Hubner, Cam Murray and Junior Totola. The rest are off contract. So there's big decisions coming, not just now, but in the next year or so at South Sydney that could really see a turnover in that roster.
Yeah. All right, on the Haas deal though to Souths, it's a 3-year deal, but there's already been discussion and talk that there's get-out clauses for him. What do you think that looks like?
I think that there is from my understanding, is that there is a get-out clause, but that's attached to Wayne, right? So I'm not so sure it's anything to do with R360, although you'd never say that's dead in the water given the money that they were previously offering Payne. But Bennett's currently signed until the end of 2027, right? And he is negotiating or talking about going an extra season. Who knows, though, with Wayne. So he's 76 years of age at the moment. He's coached for 50 years. He's 77, 78 in that 28 season. And, who knows how long he goes on for. But I'll tell you one thing about the bloke. He loves football and he loves talking football more than anyone else. Yeah. He just never gets sick of it. He never gets sick of hanging around the younger guys or just being a part of that. That's his life. It's been his life for as long as he's known.
My biggest rap for Wayne is he's obviously a damn good coach, but his ability to evolve and coach, let's say, Wally Lewis, Alan Langer, Kevy Walters, Wendell Saylor, through to Darren Lockyer and Shane Webke, now all of a sudden he's influencing guys like Payne Haas and Latrell Mitchell. He's done it for 50 years. It's incredible. And I would say if he's making this much of a play by getting Payne Haas, I think he's hanging around at South to get the job done. I would assume so, because you're not going to play the fatherly figure card to Payne Haas.
Well, the Wayne...
And then go, oh, by the way, I'm
only going to be here for the first year.
Yeah.
They have to re-sign Wayne. Otherwise, according to the get-out clause, Wayne's only there for 27.
I wouldn't imagine it's a big problem, though, for the club, would it? Because you can see with this deal what he means to that club. That's not to say Wayne hasn't got guys below him already, and Ben Hornby and people coming through that he relies on heavily for the coaching side of things. And, there's always been talk that someone like Sam could turn up back at the Rabbitohs down the track as the coach to go beyond Wayne. But for now, it'd be pretty hard to find a better fit, knowing that all the top coaches around the game are pretty much locked up anyway.
When was Wayne's last grand final win? Dragons?
His last was, the Dragons. So then the 2015 grand final, they got beaten in
and then
Golden
lost with
Point, and then they lost with South.
Yeah, so 210. It's a long time ago.
Yeah.
He's chasing it.
Oh, yeah.
He's ready.
And you know what? He would have sat back, like you said previously, and when Keon had gone, he would have known that he had to go to the top of the market to get someone special to lift them, because he doesn't want his legacy to be what you just spoke about. He was a great coach that lasted 50 years but didn't win a premiership in his last 16.
He wouldn't be taking any extra joy out of taking the best player in Brisbane to South.
Not at all.
Would he?
No, you wouldn't imagine so.
No, surely not.
Well, you think about the way, mate, he was devastated at the way the Broncos sacked him in 2018 via email, and it was a really, really ugly time in that club's period. And
Does Wayne work emails?
Well, he did in those days. I think he'd been out to lunch. The story at the time was, and
what's his email?
And he was notified by email that he'd been punted, and you can imagine that left a lot of animosity between the two parties. But Lara, don't worry about that. You would have seen that.
There's some history between these two clubs, and let's talk about Adam Reynolds. You mentioned as well earlier that we had Payne Haas on Sunday, and then on Monday, Adam Reynolds announces that this season will be his last. I don't think any of us were particularly shocked by that. Maybe it was another tough pre-season that finally put a full stop on it for him personally.
Yeah, I think, soft tissue injuries. He went to Brisbane at a time when they weren't at their best. He's worked hard, sprinkled his magic dust, and he got that grand final. He deserves to go to the Caxton Hotel, drink a 4X with the likes of Alan Langer and Kevin Walters, all the premiership winning captains and halfbacks that the Brisbane Broncos have done, because he delivered on the promise, right? Yeah. So I think, whatever he wants to choose next in life is just around the corner for him. He's going to have to get his body right to play, a good, consistent brand this year. But even if he doesn't, they've got Ben Hunt there, Ezra Mann. There's something there that says, the time is right. He ticked off that box, and he can enjoy the rest of the year, because it'll bring a lot of accolades, because he was born and bred in South Sydney Territory, won a premiership with his beloved club, then made the huge call to go to Brisbane.
Backed himself. He was only offered 1 year.
And took him to a grand final, went within a whisker, and then went back there.
Yeah.
Well, he's shown amazing resilience, hasn't he? Like, from where he was at, because he didn't really make the decision to go to Brisbane because he wanted to stay at South. And at that time, they would only offer him the 1 year deal because he apparently had a broken body and couldn't do the physical stuff at training, and the club didn't want to give an extended contract to anyone over 30 years of age. But in the wake of that, they went and signed guys like Jack Whiten on long-term deals, and Cody Walker continued to get long-term deals. So Reynolds would have been, in his heart of hearts, pretty upset at the way South's treated him. And to go up to Brisbane and do that, it's amazing.
In South's defence, I think they made a couple of prelim finals in consecutive years, right? So there was a couple of history trying to predict the future that hadn't got the job done. And Adam, to his credit, goes to Brisbane, a huge challenge, but he obviously improved in the areas that he didn't get right at South prior. So I think he deserves a big pat on the back for him evolving and changing, saying, you know what, I left this under circumstances I necessarily didn't want to, but hold on a minute, I actually didn't achieve this. I need to improve in these areas, and he's gone away and fixed it. And what the Broncos did last year, he deserves to ride off in the sunset.
Can I ask you this, though? Knowing what you know about playing halfback and the battle of keeping your mind on the job when you know that your body's just about gone, to make a decision at the start of the season that you were going to call this your last year and retire at the end of the season, and having concerns over, your physicality and that, how hard will it be for him to manage his way through this season, and how does he go about that? Does it impact your levels?
No, I think it's, in terms of being the age and playing halfback, physically he's just going to have to do all the little things to keep his body in check, right? But, I made the decision to walk away at the end of 2019, and I was excited about the first part, fell in a hole halfway through it. Viliami kick-out put me about 6 foot under at Penrith one night, and I drove home going, I'm not playing anymore. But I still had 10, 12 weeks to get through. And then there's light at the end of the tunnel. At the back end of 2019, I had a heap of energy because I knew that my days were numbered. So you kick again. So it's about Adam getting his body right, but he will get excited at the start of the year. He'll fall into a little bit. And as long as Brisbane are in a healthy shape, he will start trying to play his best football and peak at the right time of year. Because there is light at the end of the tunnel, counting down, that gives you energy as a 36-something halfback to try and do it all again.
And surely it makes a difference when you're in a team like that. Do you know what I mean? Like if you're playing your last year and you're a team that's not going to have a season potentially of great heights, you're a team that could be struggling to make the 8. They should be a team that contends. He's got that amazing roster around him, so that should surely be hugely.
He's got the best front rower in the game running forward for him. He's got the most dynamic, athletic fullback the game's seen in a long time in Reece Walsh. Yeah. All he really has to do is get it right off the quick play of the ball and give it to Reece. It's pretty straightforward. Yeah, and on the other side of the field, he's got that as well. So,
let's move down to Victoria and to your former club, the Melbourne Storm. And for the first time in a while, we are not going to be speculating around Craig Bellamy's future because he has put pen to paper and has said he is not going anywhere now till the end of 2028, which I think is great news, incredible news for the club, for the players, for everyone involved. And it means that he obviously has a job that he wants to get done there.
Yeah, well, Craig Bellamy never listened to me for 14 years when I was playing under him, and I've told him for the last 3 years to retire, come play some golf and just put his feet up. I think he's a little bit like Wayne. I think the young people inspire him. I think he's super aspirational about winning another grand final. And if you ask him if he's going to retire, he tells you, oh, what am I going to do? Twiddle my thumbs and walk around the beach and things like that. So I think he just gets energy from being disciplined and trying to not only win football games, but one thing that Wayne and Craig take a lot of responsibility is that young men come to their club at 16, 17, 18 years of age, and mums and dads entrust them to turn their young boy into respected young men. And I think that's a big part of Craig Bellamy's approach, because he's one of the few coaches that can absolutely hit you between the eyes with some feedback, but the next moment put his arm around you and tell you that he still loves you, and it's genuine. And I feel like the evolution of going through sort of Matt Guy, Robbie Kearns, Stephen Kearney to Cameron, Billy, Greg, Ryan Hoffman, now through to Harry Grant, Munster, Hughes, I think that forever keeps him changing and getting better. And whether you're a coach or a player, if you've got the mindset that you want to get better, I think why not keep going on? So I've told him to retire last 3 years, but he's gone to sign 2 more years.
What's different now, though, is that for probably the past 5 years, it's been a 1 year extension all the time. Every year at the start of the season, you're left thinking, is Bellamy going to go on? Oh, he'll make his decision after round 3. No, I'll put it back to round 5, blah, blah, blah. But now he's decided, no, I'm going through to the end of 2028.
Yeah.
So do you think the fact that the Storm have, gone so close but finished so far from the premiership in the last 2 years has motivated Craig to say, OK, I'll set myself a challenge of getting us to where we have to go?
I don't know this, but if he had won one of the last 2, I'm pretty certain he probably retires. The fact that he hasn't signed on for 1 year tells me that, all right, guys, we've gone so close the last 2 years. I'm all in this next 2 years. You're all in with me, and let's get it done.
Yeah.
Because the Melbourne Storm haven't been under pressure for a long time. They are so consistent. Top 4 every year. Only ever missed the finals once under Craig with the salary cap year. They will be in the top 4 again.
Yeah.
But they've lost 2 grand finals in a row. Harry Grant, Jerome Hughes, Cameron Munster. I'm telling you, I've lost a couple of grand finals, and you second guess yourself.
So what's the emotional scars for them coming out of the fact that if Kamakamika grounds that try, they win the grand final, can they do it again? Can they go to the next level on the back of that heartache? I
would have thought, after losing to Penrith the year before, that, and they were in a position to win last year, they should have won that game. And they will be consistent, they will work hard, they've got the right game model that will get them back to a big game. But the key to the Melbourne Storm is that they got arguably the best coach, arguably the best halfback, 5'8", and number 9 in the game. those are the guys that are going to deliver on premiership day. So if I'm those three guys, as I said, I've checked myself after losing a grand final. You've got to get better and you've got to stare that challenge in the face again. And the rest of the team will follow what Jerome Hughes, Munster and Harry Grant do. But it's a bit on them to go to the next level. Yes.
You spoke about Adam Reynolds before and his situation at South Sydney where he didn't quite get them to where they needed to go. And then I guess now would Craig look at that spine and Pappenhausen's gone. But the other three big ones are still there. Would he look at that?
There's a lot of pressure on those three guys to improve and go again next level. They are great players. They are, top of the shelf when it comes to their positions in our game. But they need to improve to get the ultimate glory.
Do you back him in to get one before 28?
Yeah, you'd be silly not to. History shows that they will be there. Prelim final basically every year. And all it is just a couple of other things to get right to go again.
It's an amazing record, isn't it, when you look at what he's done since 2003 and basically missed the finals once. And that was the salary cap year.
Lowest finishing position, like 6th or 7th.
Incredible. Incredible consistency.
All right, Paul Crawley, a job interview here. Would you like to become a GM of a football club? Has that ever been on your bucket list?
Michael Chammas, eh? Well, you know what? When I first heard of that, I thought, what? But then the more thought I put into it, I thought, well, he's a pretty talented guy. He's got good connections in the game. He's driven to succeed. I think a lot of football bosses over the years have underestimated the challenge of dealing with the media, and Chammas will know that. He's got great allies in Volandis and obviously Abdo that are going to help him along. And I just think it comes down to knowing he's got to get a good coach. He's got to get an experienced coach. He's probably got to get an experienced recruitment officer. To make it, and he's obviously going to be learning on the run, isn't he? Like so many things to learn, but if he has the right coach with him...
But it's a brand new club, so there is so many moving parts to
So he's got full power, full autonomy to make those decisions.
So he's not... So they've got Catherine Harris, they've got, is it Lorna McPherson in the CEO's job. So he's got two people above him that are obviously qualified business people.
But from a football perspective, to make the football decisions.
Football perspective... He seems to be at the top of the food chain, unless, of course, he was to go and get, or, a person like a Brad Arthur or, hypothetically speaking,
but
Ivan
he will make
Cleary.
that decision.
Well, he'd have to be a part of it. The NRL runs that club, don't forget
so
that.
So you've worked with some GMs. From your perspective, how integral is that role in setting up a club, and do you need someone with a lot more experience on the board to do that?
Look, from my perspective, yes, it's absolutely a crucial part of the success of a football club. For all the raps that Craig Bellamy gets, Frank Panisi does exactly the same thing that Craig does on and off the football field, but he does it in the football department. So that's been a marriage over a long period of time that's worked. So yes, it's crucial. There's one thing that I think the Commission, the NRL, and particularly the new sort of franchises, the game's changed a lot in recent times, and I feel like there needs to be some footy IQ, because football and rugby league is the core business of these new franchises. Winning is everything, and if you get off to a really good start, it helps everything else fall into place. So I think some of the decisions based on that needs to be some contemporary voices. If I'm Andrew Abdo or Peter Volandis, I'm going to go get some recently retired players that have skin in the game, know good strategy, understand the game, and invest time in them, and then plug them into underneath Chammas or support him in that capacity, because they need to get. There's a lot of money on the line for the PNG team, and then the investment. You can't walk away from that. But if they don't get good people who care about the game and are willing to do whatever it takes to make PNG work, you're just going to get players that are taking the tax exemption, that are on 1 or 2 year deals, taking their money and running, and not particularly caring about embedding something in that country for rugby league to stand still for 10, 20, 30 years. So I think that the important part for Chammas, I don't know Chammas all that well, but invest in people, get good rugby league intelligence in the business, and then everything falls all off the back of that. Don't get guns for hire that just want to take the tax exemption, live there for a year or two and say, you know what, I'm out of here, I'm going.
Yeah.
But that's the biggest selling point, isn't it? Because you got to look at PNG too. At its core, aside from the fact it's an NRL team, it's a political decision. Like, that's where it's being funded from, you know. The government is funding this team to have a footprint in PNG to try and, you know, avert the Chinese crisis. So that's why it started. And it's a very political decision, but ultimately, if you have a team up there that can't find its way to success, it'll be a disaster, won't it?
Well, that's why I would invest in people who genuinely care about the game and want to embed it there, because if you've just got people that are taking that exemption and cashing a cheque, they're cashing that and getting out in a year or two. Get some people that genuinely care and are going to stand there in front of all the adversity that it's going to take.
How do you find those people?
That's Chamas's job.
Because that is the selling point. The selling point for that club at the moment is that it's tax-free dollars.
Yeah. So, look, most people will say, you know, go and get, you know, the top end of the talent. You know, get some talent in and win football games, but find some genuine good people that are going to.
Well, the head coach has to be the top of the pile. So who is available that is going to do all those things you just said? Who is going to care about PNG and making it a success when it comes into the competition? Who's available?
Well, given what's happened at South in recent days, you'd say that just strikes Bennett off the list, doesn't it? Because he'll be extending his stay there to align with what he wants to do. Brad Arthur's a good coach that is on the market. I thought the job that he did at Parramatta when he first took over a wooden spoon club that was in absolute chaos at its boardroom level, and he single-handedly held that club together and took them to a grand final in 2022. You know, he's a capable coach. There's a lot of good young coaches out there. A guy like Willie Peters is obviously wanting to come back. I just don't know if you could... I don't know if you could give that job to a young coach. Like, I would see the Clearys as, you know, that would be the dream come true, wouldn't it? If you could get Ivan and get Nathan, and there's the opportunity for Jet to go there too, you would think that would be a dream come true for PNG, knowing what they know. But is it, you know, is it a possibility?
I
don't know if it would be.
To get involved in things like this and make sure that
who would you see?
It's on them to make this a success. They've made this call to.
Craig's
it's a huge
another guy.
call.
Would he?
Yeah. Well, I think Peter and Andrew have obviously put a lot of responsibility into Chamas, and that is his responsibility.
Yeah.
It's not ours to, you know, investigate the world and find who the best person is. That's his job. Like, he will live and die by the decisions that he makes, and he needs to get good people who care about rugby league, not just guns for hires. They're going to take the cash and run.
Yeah. We have so much more to talk about, but we've run out of time. So we're going to get into some fan feedback questions, because the fans love asking you guys some curly ones. Let's start with Sam Kerr, spelt C-U-R-R, so not the famous Sam Kerr, different one. Can the Eels play finals, Cooper, if Mitch Moses plays at least 20 games this year?
Yeah, they'll be one of the teams that are fighting for the edge of it. I think Mitch Moses has a gun year. I'm picking Mitch for the Dally M this year. Couple of reasons why. I think he is very good. He has dominated big games when he has played. And Jonah Pezzett arriving there for a period of time is just going to take some cobwebs off him. If Jason Roller's got another 12 months, I think Mitch is going to be in the best player in a team that sits around winning more games than losing. Mitch to win the Dally M.
Love that. Because he just hasn't had the sustained success on field for his injury. But when he has played, he's always shot the lights
To the
out.
question, he has to play more than 20 games to win.
For them to make finals. All right. Now, Ship to Thailand would like to know, if rugby league didn't exist, what would all three of us be doing? What job would you have carved out a career in? Paul?
Well, I was never good enough to play NRL, but I always loved rugby league, and that's all I've ever really thought about. I remember standing at high school in year 7 and speaking in front of the whole school and giving a speech on rugby league. Like, I just loved the game that much, so I never really thought about anything else. And I got into journalism when I was 19, and I've been in it ever since. So.
Would you be doing Lars? I want to know
Good
this
question.
answer.
I did I worked in event management for a while, but I really didn't like it. I just loved sport. So if it wasn't rugby league, I'd be working in a sports newsroom somewhere. Yeah.
It's a tough question, but you got to find something you're passionate about and just work your backside off to be good at it.
What about you? Could there have been anything else?
I did a
golfer, a pro golfer.
Actually, yes, there we go.
He'd be a pro golfer.
I'd love to be able to do that.
Of course you would be.
No, I'm not. Ambitions and capabilities get mixed up
Pie in the sky. You could do anything.
A pro shop.
I would have liked to have gone to the Olympics as an equestrian rider. That was a dream, but it was never going to happen.
I don't know the difference between the front and the back end of a horse, so equestrian would have been my goal.
Crawls, what would be your dream? Honestly, put the dream out there.
I would have loved to have been a world champion surfer, but again, that was never going to happen.
There was no rules. You can do whatever you want, just not be involved in rugby league. Okay, who's more likely, Supervisor Mick wants to know, who's more likely to
Supervisor Mick.
Win a comp? It might be Michael Ennis. Who's more likely to win a comp in 2027? Souths with Haas or Broncos without Haas?
Broncos without.
They're more likely. You're not going to give Souths a hope even with Haas.
I think there's way more moving pieces for Souths to be winning a competition, but Broncos have everything already there. Ezra, Reece Walsh, Patrick Carrigan, there's enough, and I imagine their talent coming through is enough as well. So, Tony Staggs,
I'll say Souths, only because I think Haas signing again after the disappointment last year and the injury crisis that they had. I think they've got a lot to prove this year, and if they can get themselves into the finals this year, I think Haas can take them to that top four. But again, they've got a few problems with their roster that they need to iron out, particularly the halves. Yeah.
In Wayne Bennett, you trust, of course. All right, well, gents, we've got an incredible weekend of action, wall-to-wall rugby league to look forward to at Fox League. You mentioned it already, you're excited to see some youngsters. Is there a fixture you're particularly looking forward to?
No, I want to see how Jonah Glover goes. Given that he didn't get a go at the Dragons last year, I want to see if he's capable of being that he's 23 years of age at South. When we're talking about what South could potentially do, is he going to be the answer there? I want to see Dylan Brown for the Knights and see how he goes with Sandon Smith. I really want to watch these young kids from Manly, the two halves that are coming through. There's so many good young players that are going to be featured, and when you go through the list, you look at kids that come from your area, and I always get excited about that too. There's a young boy from Terrigal called Matthew Humphries that's number 18 for South this week. And he played a trial last year but got unfortunately knocked out in the early exchanges. But he's a year older, and he's another one that I'd like to see come through, because Souths do have a very handy young 5'8" in their SG Ball that everyone's talking about, who also comes from Terrigal, called Taj Alvarez. And eventually, I'd like to see Humphries and Alvarez as the South Sydney
Central Coast
6 and 7. So that's what I'm looking forward to.
I'm looking forward to the Dolphins. I think they play finals this year. Zoe Katoa is a freak. He's going to dominate the competition for the next 10 years. But Tom Gilbert back from long-term injury. There's a couple of guys that come back Flegler back. I think they could do something this year. Yeah. Keen to see what couple of halves like Joey Walsh does at Manly and Hugo Savala at the Roosters. If he comes out and brains it with, Sam Walker and Daly will be their halves, you just have to find a spot for this kid. That's my opinion. If he comes out and brains it, he's been tearing up the track at training apparently, comes out and brains it, you've just got to find a spot, because when a gun player like Daly comes in, young kid could drop the bottom lip, I don't want to train. I've got to move somewhere else. It happens so often. He backed himself, and he comes out and blitzes it. I think it's Saturday, Newcastle.
We'll be there.
He needs to be in the 17.
And Dylan Brown on debut in a Newcastle jersey in the number 6 alongside Sandon Smith. So looking forward to that. And also, speaking of the Dolphins taking on the Titans, Josh Hannay gets his first start as the coach, and I think new era for the Titans. It'd be great to see them make some inroads this year.
I think the fact that Jaden Campbell and Tino have committed just because Josh Hannay's had a conversation with them. They haven't played a game. So the coach has come in and sat them down for coffee and said, this is my vision, this is the person I am. And these two guys have gone, I'm in. I think all signs off the back of that, I think they're going to be lifting up the ladder this year.
Did you think it was interesting that they've picked Lockie Ilias at 6 this week, knowing that, well, obviously Brimson's going to probably be the first choice 6 when the season starts?
Yeah, at different stages. I think, at this stage when you've got your preferred position, sometimes when you just have a crack and show the coach what you're made of, it doesn't matter if you're in your preferred position or not. It's like Hugo Savala. Like if he comes out and just brains it, Lachlan Lillies comes out and brains it, the coach is going, you know what? Might have to find a spot for this kid.
I wonder if Maddie and Gordy are making phone calls to players at the Titans and saying, please re-sign Tino, stay here, Jaden. New owners maybe.
Yeah.
Helping Josh Hannay
maybe they're
get
on
the
the
deal
coaching
done.
staff these days.
Who knows? That'll be stealth. Their involvement will be stealth.
When they win, I think they'll say they are, and when they lose, it'll be someone else's fault, right?
Do you think Maddie's going to put a Titans jersey on this year and walk around? Sit on the podcast.
We will get him on the show wearing a Titans jersey. If the Titans win, he has to wear a jersey.
If they make the 8.
Yeah, there you go.
Whoa.
Yep.
Yes, that would be quite.
He loves this podcast too, so Maddie's watching it.
There you go. Well, Paul Cooper, a pleasure to have you back on the podcast. Can't wait for this weekend. You can catch all the action, of course, right here on Fox League.